TipTrace.
Hello everybody and welcome back after a while to TipTrace. If you don't know what this series is, it's a series where I analyse and deconstruct artwork that I find to be particularly inspiring. I've done a few episodes of this already, but not for a little while now because uni work and stuff has got in the way. But I saw a website design that I really loved and I thought I'd share it with you guys and see how it was built. It's by a guy called Mike from Creative Mints, and it's really beautiful. It uses great colours, uses really good construction. Let's just open it up here and take a look. There's some really good structure here. I really like the abstract grid that's going on. So I thought I'd break this down and go through how I think he might have created this. For those who don't know, who aren't familiar, the structure of these sort of episodes is I'll analyze the piece of artwork, we'll rebuild it in a second section, and then in the final section we'll come to the conclusions as to whether we think we've successfully managed to recreate this particular piece of artwork.
Part 1. Analysis.
So part 1 of analysis is I start to break down the things that I like about this design. What I really like, first of all, is the color palette. It's beautiful, it pops, it's really powerful, and he hasn't overused it. A lot of the time when people have really powerful color palettes, they tend to use too much color. But Mike here, I don't know Mike's last name. Mike, it just says Mike from Creative Mints. What Mike has done here is really good use of white space. So we'll put that down, color balance and white space. I really also like the abstract grid. I think it works really well, if I could spell abstract. It works really well in this concept. It is very much conforming to a grid. You can see already there's like the rule of thirds going along here where this is 2/3 of the page and this is 1. But then it starts to break away from that, offset these offset margins where one is larger than the other. But then the familiarity and the rigid composition is still held between these shapes. Really cool, really love it. Love these bold colors and how everything's just offset a little bit. It seems like a perfect blend of chaos and order. There is a grid underlying everything, but it doesn't become formulaic because of that. So I'm just going to put chaos and order. Those are the 4 key things that we're going to try and keep in mind whilst we're deconstructing this piece of artwork. So with that in mind, let's jump right into the deconstruction.
Part 2. Deconstruction.
Now, this could not be the case. It could have been done in different software, but I believe that Mike might have chosen to make this in Adobe XD because it's a brilliant piece of software for quickly mocking up websites and things like that. For the more intricate, geometric-y, smooth shapes that he's made, that's probably been done in Illustrator. So we'll be using a combination of Adobe XD and Illustrator today. I'm going to open up a Web 1920 file in Adobe XD for us to get started though. And I'm just going to grab a screenshot that I've taken of the entire website. And I'm just going to click and drag on the artboard here to fill that space, just so we've got a reference file to work from. Okay, just going to make that roughly fit. Going to drag this all the way down, and we'll just call this reference. So now that we've got this Adobe XD workspace set up, it's probably best to start thinking about color palettes. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to create this geometric-y sort of blob shapes here because that's a reoccurring theme throughout. You can see use it again at the bottom here. I'm not going to worry too much about using the same pictures or the same patterns in this part here. I'll probably just fill them with some placeholder images for this particular one. Same as the fonts, I'm going to find a similar font rather than using the exact same one. It's mainly more about figuring out the construction and the way he's thought about putting this grid together, which I think is really beautiful. So let's pop over to Illustrator, where I've already created a 1080 by 1080 pixel canvas, and I'm just going to drop this screen cap of the website here. First thing I'm going to do is grab a bunch of squares with my rectangle tool, and I'm just going to start duplicating these with Alt and drag. So I'm going to grab a whole load of these. I'm not being particularly neat because they're not going to be part of my design. I'm simply going to select each one, press I, and eyedropper a different color, pressing V to go back to the selection tool. So that's 4 colors there. That looks like the same. Might need this lighter color. Definitely going to need this green and this purple. There seem to be greens here. So this is meant to be, I think, the start of this next section, if we just bring this up in photos. So that would be perhaps one of these sections here. Slightly different design, so I'm probably going to leave that bit. Let's say, I think that's probably all of the elements that we need. These are slightly different colors, however, so I'm just going to take these reds here. And that blue looks to be the same to me as well. So alongside the white, which I think might be slightly off-white, that is all the colors that we need. To recreate this, I'm going to use a freeform pen technique. So I'm going to come up to here to my curvature tool. And essentially what you can do with the curvature tool is you can click single points and it will automatically create the curves for you, as you can see, between those points. So I'm just going to quickly undo all of that. And I'm not going to follow this exactly. I'm just going to kind of freeform it a little bit. I'm going to make sure that I've just got a stroke on for now. Let's call it black. Doesn't really matter because we're going to be changing this in a moment. And I'm just going to be using the curvature tool to come through. You can press escape to exit out of a line. Just going to come through and I'm going to start drawing these broad strokes in here. So we can come through like this. That's quite a nice one. Go back to your curvature tool, hitting escape to cancel out of that. And I'm just coming through and overlapping shapes where I think I want to see them. Doing these broad, larger ones first. Again, not going to be trying to copy it exactly because we're just trying to deconstruct the methods that they used. It's probably like a large one going along here might look quite good. So let's just chop that up there. Okay. And then let's start thinking about some smaller segments. So we can come through like maybe this. And what's great about the curvature tool is that it handles all these little lumps and bumps for you that you could perhaps struggle with if you were doing this manually with the pen tool. You can just click and drag and you can start to edit these to your heart's content. That's looking pretty good. Let's add in a few smaller ones here. Something perhaps a bit more drastic. Like so. Okay, that looks pretty good. To finish this off, what I'm going to do is grab my rectangle tool and I'm just going to drag a box over the entire canvas. Now, if I am going a little bit fast for you, try not to worry. If you have never used Illustrator before or Adobe XD, I recommend checking out my 2 series, Intro to Illustrator and Intro to Adobe XD, where I explain all this sort of stuff that I'm doing. In this series, I'm going to assume that you've got a little bit of knowledge in this software, and we're going to just sort of move ahead at a bit of a faster pace. Now, with all these things selected here, I'm going to come up to my Pathfinder tool and I'm going to click Divide. And what that will do, if I select this and choose Ungroup, is that will change all of these elements to individual chunks that I can edit individually. Let's come up here and add a fill to all of these, make them all blue and remove the strokes. And now what we can do is just delete any bits that we don't need and come through and change these to whatever colors that we'd like. Now, I'm just going to start by randomly selecting from these different colors available to me. To try to start, what I'm doing here is I'm thinking about the color balance, thinking about the different sections of colors that I've used, trying not to put similar colors next to each other like that. So that would have to be different, of course. Pop this one as green, remembering also that the blue needs to remain in there, not to remove all the aspects of the blue. So let's just maybe make these ones go darker as it swings around. That might look quite nice. Like that. And you can see how these sorts of designs can quickly come together. Let's leave that one as blue, but change this one to this bright yellow. This one to the darker red. Let's have this one be this kind of mid-orange here. I quite like that one to be a bit darker. Actually, no, let's leave that final one as blue there. That's looking pretty good. However, I think all of these colors might be slightly too saturated. I know they look a bit more chill here because there's less of this blue color and less of the bold oranges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of these. I'm going to go to Edit, Edit Colors, Recolor Artwork. And I'm just going to grab the saturation. I'm just going to bring that down a little bit on that red. Let's do that on this one too, on this orange, and on the blue as well. Just a little bit. There we go. And you can see the difference. Bam. It's like night and day. Now, redo live color change. There we are. That means, of course, that these colors are now different. So that's fine. We can delete those, but that's okay because we're going to need these three only in Adobe XD anyway. And we can sample this when we bring it over to Adobe XD in a moment. So let's do that. Let's copy and paste this entire segment here. Go over to Adobe XD. And I'm going to create a new artboard. So new artboard here. We'll just click in place and we'll just call this main. I'm going to drag this all the way out. All the way down as far as we need it. Now, if we look at this website here, we can probably see that the main grid line continues down here. And whilst it isn't used again, you can see that this line lines up with it. And that is the general sort of 2/3 rule here. So you can create grids if you'd like inside of Adobe XD. But what I'm probably going to do is just eyeball it for now. If I paste in that shape that we just got from Illustrator, let's see if it will let me do that. There we go. That's going to have our section that we need ready, and it will maintain its shape as an SVG. If we stretch this, however, we're going to get some weird results. So you must make sure you hold Shift when you're stretching inside of Adobe XD if you want to stretch like that. And the one thing to remember is this little line here, which acts as our page fold or your web browser bottom corner. So if this is at 1080, which is what it is, and we notice that the line is cutting through our shape, when we preview this in Adobe XD, you'll notice that it's below the fold, okay, in a standard 1920 by 1080 browser. So that's already grouped together. So we're just going to pop that in the top left-hand corner. And I know that 1920 is my full screen size. So I'm just going to go to my calculator and I'm going to go 1920 divided by 3. And that's going to be 640. So 2/3 of 640 would be 1280. So we're just going to bring this over with the Shift key to about 1280. And you can just type that in exactly if you'd like to make it exactly 2/3. Oops, but of course then it's going to mess that up. So we'll just do it like so. Boom. And we'll just make it a little bit taller than the page as well. It doesn't matter that we're really squashing and stretching this because it's abstract. Doesn't matter. Couldn't think of the word then. I think 2/3 might be a little bit too much. So let's just bring that back down a little bit. Maybe over to about 60%. That looks good to me. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to use a font called Adobe Caslon Pro, I think, for these letters. Let's see what that looks like. If that doesn't look the same, then we'll try something else. Adobe Caslon Pro. Doesn't look the same, but it looks similar enough that we can get an effect that we're happy with. So I'm going to make this white and just drag that over my shape. Now, I think this would be quite nice if this is on the page fold here. In fact, let's have a quick browse. It doesn't show you the fonts inside of Adobe XD, so let's leave it like that for now. That's fine. I'm just going to grab this A. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, I think. And I'm going to pop that in the middle here. Just going to offset that. Okay, great. There's a little Ashbury logo up there, but we'll just ignore that because we don't have the logo file. Just suffice to say you'll need to put one in there. So the subtle thing that I really like here is this little indicator list that sort of suggests that you might be on the third item. That's really easy to do inside of Adobe XD. We'll just grab our circle tool, or in fact, we'll do it with the rectangle tool, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Let's draw ourselves a box, and let's make it about 10 by 10 pixels. That's a bit too small, so let's make it 20 by 20. Okay, great. I'm going to uncheck the border and I'm going to leave the fill on white. That's good enough for me. And I'm just going to drag it over here so that I can see it. If we zoom all the way in and we select our box, you can notice these little blue dots in the corners. If we drag those in, that makes it a circle. Now you might be wondering why I don't just use a circle, and I'll tell you why. If we quickly turn on by selecting our artboard, we can quickly turn on our layout. And what this does allow us to do is that this puts a standard border on the edge of our content, so we can kind of shimmy that across a little bit. Again, we're not looking to replicate this exactly, just the concepts behind it. So this has got a bit of a larger padding, but that's not too much trouble, if I'm honest. What we could do in the meantime, I suppose, is unselect these and then just shift this over so that it's exactly on a line. Maybe that grid line there. And then once we're happy with that positioning, we can just turn that off then for now, so it's not in the way. Let's grab these shapes and I'm just going to duplicate them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And a great thing about Adobe XD is this reference here where it sort of snaps and shows you exactly how many pixels between each item. Now, the reason we used rounded rectangles is if I now come in and expand this middle one, because that's the indicator for what item we're on, as you can see over here, Adobe XD will maintain those rounded corners. If we do that with a circle, then it would obviously stretch and deform, which is no good to us. Take this color and we're going to grab maybe that middle one there. That looks pretty good. Kind of happy with that. These are still a little bit fat though. So let's make these 16 by 16. How does that look? Yeah, a little bit nicer. So let's do that instead. What we can also do is the standard way of creating like this. So we've got 5 shapes. And then you can go up to your align tools and distribute horizontally or distribute vertically, sorry. And then you can drag out that shape as well, which will make this color. Perfect. Okay, that looks pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Let's do a quick look at these items up here then. We've got this little rectangle as sort of like a start page indicator and a menu title up here in a different font. Let's quickly add those in. What I'm going to do is go to my layout, open that up, and I'm going to duplicate this shape. And I'm just going to bring it over here. Bring it to the top of the page, like so. And this sort of menu icon here, we can just replicate that. If we zoom all the way in and undo these shapes, we can make this a lot smaller. You can zoom out as well to eyeball what size that should be. That looks pretty good. And we can quickly use Alt-Shift to duplicate those. I'm going to make this the dark blue color from earlier. And I'm going to grab my text tool and in caps type menu. Now, Adobe Caslon Pro doesn't look very similar to the original design. Make that blue as well so we can see it. But something like Lovelo, which is a font that I've downloaded, might. Does that look fairly similar? Yeah, not too bad, but the letters are a bit too tight together. So what you can do is increase that spacing here, about 20. Well, let's make it a lot more, about 100. There you go, looks pretty good. So you can shrink that down, maybe make that 24 and pop that next to the menu. So this is what Adobe XD is really, really good for doing. It's really powerful at just creating these really quick little options here. Let's drag that out to the outside edge and voila, we've got our menu. Let's make that a nice dark red color. And seeing as he's done it in his design, oops, let's take off the, so what happened there was I sampled with the guide over the layout and it sampled with the layout color blurred into it. And it's done so on this blue as well. So we'll just change that to the red. And we'll change all of that to the blue, the proper blue, which looks a lot nicer. Seeing as this one's done it, we'll just square off that as well. And maybe make it just a little bit less chunky. Perfect, looking good. Let's grab a quick title, season opening. And we'll pop that in Adobe Caslon Pro. Awesome, let's make it 48. Nope, let's make it much larger. Let's make it 128. Perfect. Way, way too much space though, because it's remembered the spacing from before. So instead of 218, let's make that 140. Cool, cool. And the line spacing, we're not super bothered about. Let's bring back our layout for a moment, and we'll just make sure that snaps up like so. And we'll just pop it here like that. One good thing to do is just to duplicate this so you know your settings are the same. You could bring the size of that font down to about, let's make it 36. That seems good enough. And let's make the leading, well, here's a good trick. Leading or space between the lines should be at 120% for sort of standard reading text. That's been sort of a rule that's been trusted for a while. So if it was 36 and we bring up our calculator again, you could go 36 divided by 100 gets you 1%, which is 3.6. And you can times that by 20, which gets you 7.2. Obviously, with time, you'll come to realize what this is without doing any of the maths. So you would then do 36 plus 7.2, which is 43.2. And that becomes a good space between your lines. I think that's called leading or leading for your basic text stuff. In which case you can just do a bit of lorem ipsum in there. I don't know the rest. Dolor consecutor elit or something like that. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. That's the whole point of it. It's looking a little bit bold, so we'll just drop that down to regular. And we'll line all of that up. Awesome. Looks pretty good. Let's do this button quickly then. Luckily, this is nice and easy. We'll grab a rectangle tool. We'll turn off the border. And we'll just hide our layout for the moment because we don't need it. We'll grab our rectangle. We'll make it the same red that we've got here. Actually, let's make it this orange because it already exists. We can duplicate that shape with Alt. And we can drag this down until it becomes a perfect square and make that the darker color. Does it look okay? Doesn't look great. So we'll just use that the same color and then we'll just tweak this color. Bam. Bam, 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 bam. That looks pretty good. Awesome. A little bit chunky. Let's thin him out a bit. Not super bothered if that end bit is a square, really. If I press Ctrl G, I can group these, and then I can align them with the rest of my items here. And make sure there's even space between the text and the bottom of the page. And you can kind of just hit preview to see what that's going to look like overall. Looks pretty decent. What else is on here? There is a star, there is a take part, and there is an arrow. So what we can do is we can duplicate this menu text. Oops, sorry, not in the group. We'll just copy and paste it, ungroup that. And the reason we copy this is because we know then that that's the same properties. So that when we type in the phrase take part, it's going to look exactly the same. Boom. Let's center that guy up like so, visually. And let's add in a little star. Now, probably best just to copy and paste a star across from Illustrator because that's the easiest way to make them. So if we go to Illustrator and we can go to our star tool, pop this guy like that, make him, what color was it? White. Let's make it white edges. And if we go back to here, I could be mistaken, but you should be able to round off the corners a little bit. Ding, perfect. Perfectamundo. Let's copy this guy. Pop him back into Adobe XD. Okay, that's weird. It wouldn't let me copy that across. So what I had to do was outline the strokes on this just by right-clicking. By going to Object, Path, Outline Stroke. And then when I copied and pasted, it worked just fine. Unfortunately now, however, the stroke looks a little bit thin, of course. So what we're going to do is just increase that to a nice chunky one. Go to Object, Path, Outline Stroke again, select all of this and paste it inside of Adobe XD. Just another little quirk from our friends over at Adobe. Let's grab all this stuff and plonk them in the middle, and then we've got our take part box finished. Lovely. Let's add a quick arrow. Again, might be easier to do it in Illustrator, might be easier just to create it with the line tool in here. It's completely up to you how you do it. I'm just going to click and drag this line over. I'm going to make it a thickness of 2. A thickness of 2, not an opacity of 2. Grab this and make it white. And then using the pen tool, just going to come in here and add an extra bit of shape on. Come off of this here. Eyeball this. That'll do. That'll do. Make this 2 in thickness and white. And we can just round off this corner as well to make that a little bit easier on ourselves. And round off this to make that a little bit easier on ourselves. And bring that in. Like so. Nice quick arrow. Nothing too fancy. If you double click on a line, you can adjust the individual points and make that a bit shorter. And then using the select tool, I can just group those together with Ctrl G. Holding Shift will scale it up. And we'll just pop that in the middle. like so. Might stretch this guy back a bit. Stretch this guy back a bit. Perfect. There's our take part button. That's looking pretty good, I think, so far. Just realized this episode is getting a little bit long. So for the first time, I might do a 2-part TipTrace. Why the hell not? Thank you very much for watching. Stick around for part 2, which I'll hopefully be out a couple of days after this video. And we will look into creating the rest of this website here. This really cool grid stuff, these nice little boxes, blah, blah, blah. As you can see, it's going to be more of the same, but there's some really nice techniques inside of Adobe XD to create this sort of stuff. So stick around and I'll see you for part 2, the finale of this TipTrace episode. Make sure to go and check out Mike from Creative Mints. His work is really good. I love it. Look at all this awesome stuff. Check it out and I'll see you next time.
Remember to subscribe for more tips, tricks, and tutorials. Thanks for watching.